The views expressed on the Making It Matter podcast are that of Gunnar Esiason, Julia Ray, and guests, and not necessarily those of the Boomer Esiason Foundation. Nothing in the Making It Matter podcast should be considered medical advice. Such advice can only be given by a physician who is experienced with cystic fibrosis. The Boomer Esiason Foundation, Gunnar Esiason, Julia Ray, and guests cannot be held responsible for any damage which may result from using the information on this podcast without the permission of your medical doctor. You're listening to the Making It Matter podcast with Gunnar Esiason and Julia Ray, presented by the Boomer Esiason Foundation and GunnarEsiason.com.
Hey there, it's Gunnar Esiason, and thanks for joining Julie and I for episode 30 of the Making It Matter podcast series, Living with a Roommate.
Hi everyone, Making It Matter is a weekly podcast presented by the Boomer Esiason Foundation and GunnarEsiason.com, highlighting the challenges that people with CF face and the people who face them.
Since Julie and I both have cystic fibrosis, we're remaining compliant with the National Cystic Fibrosis Guidelines regarding patient interaction and cross-infection by recording via Skype. This podcast is made possible by Novartis, Vertex Pharmaceuticals, and the Digital Credit Union, so big thanks to them for always supporting BEF educational initiatives. All right, so last week we talked about college. This week we're going to take it a step further, not necessarily just about college, but we're going to talk about roommates and living with them. This is obviously maybe not obvious, but it is a huge question that a lot of people with cystic fibrosis have as they're growing older. Especially people who are about to graduate high school and head off into college. Do I live with a roommate or do I live by myself? There's definitely pros and cons to both. Julie and I have done both, so we're going to talk about that today. So Julia, why don't you tell us a little bit about the way it worked for you?
Sure. So when I went off to Fordham in New York City, I was placed with 3 girls that were my suite mates. So I always had a single room, but I had suite mates and shared a living area and kitchen with them. And I loved that. I loved having that aspect of college experience, but also having my own personal private space. I think, there are pros and cons even to having roommates like that too, because one of my roommates, love you, but she's a mess. And she's self-proclaimed a mess too, so she knows it. Never did her dishes, didn't take the trash out. So I think from a cleanliness standpoint, I was ready to move out on my own, which I did. So I didn't have the typical experience because I was living on my own with no roommates after my first year. So
to get that straight, you moved off campus after freshman year. So your sophomore, junior, senior, you lived off campus by yourself, and you still live by yourself today.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're clear there. All right. So now on my end, when I went off to college, I did live with a roommate. My best friend from high school also happened to go to Boston College, so we lived together. I basically made that happen by going to the Office of Disabilities, which is what we talked about last week, and they made sure that would happen. From there, we actually took on roommates. So the following year, I lived with 3 other guys, making 4 total, and we didn't have our own individual rooms. So my first year, it was me and Dave lived in the same, our beds were 5 feet from each other. We lived in the same room.
Okay.
But we also had a little common room as well, and that's where I did my treatments in the morning and stuff like that, or at night when he was trying to sleep, or when someone was asleep, I was able to do treatments, or vice versa. We were able to move around without sort of getting each other's way. Sophomore year, there were 2 bedrooms and a common room, so it was two people to a room, and then we obviously had a common room. And then my junior year, I lived with 3 other guys. We all had our own rooms because we lived off campus at Boston College. You live on campus essentially 3 years, off campus 1 year. So we all had our own room that junior year. And then by the time I was a senior, since I had a feeding tube and I was going to be coming back on campus, it was decided that I would have my, I talked it over with the disabilities office, my parents and my doctor and my friends and all that stuff. It was decided that I was going to have my own single room within a larger suite. There were 5 of us total. I had my own room, and then the other 4 guys shared 2 rooms. So, because I had the feeding tube and the pump obviously makes noise overnight and stuff like that. So that's the living situation that we're dealing with. And then by the time I graduated college, I actually wasn't doing well. My health was kind of in a downward spiral. So I moved home, and I've been home ever since. I'd say now it's more so to save money from having to pay rent. Which is there's no shame there. So so it sounds like we've had different experiences with this. Personally, I loved living with the roommates. That was probably my favorite part of college.
Yeah. I didn't hate it. There were aspects of it that I absolutely loved. I'm a super social person, so having constant interaction was something that was very nice for me to have. But it also was what made me what I think was the reason behind my first hospitalization and only hospitalization in college was constantly wanting to be social and therefore starting to skip treatments. I think I started skipping treatments for a number of reasons. I was living with girls that didn't have to do them, so I kind of was like for the first time in my life, like mad about it. I know, I couldn't help it. But I also stopped doing treatments because, again, super social me, would stop doing treatments because I would hear them in the common area or the kitchen and want to talk and be a part of whatever was going on. When really I just needed to put a neb in it,
Huh. Yeah, I don't think I'm not sure I ever felt that. I never felt like I was missing out on something. I just I think growing up, the treatments were just always a very normal social thing for me, so it never really was a problem. And I was also doing my treatments in the common area. I wasn't doing it in the bedroom. So, like, if someone was ever walking around in the room or someone new was coming in the room or something like that, like I would be there doing my treatment. So they would just have to deal with it. So that was probably what kept me doing my treatments. But I definitely did get sick. I don't think that's, I don't know. I can't blame that on my roommates. I think the dorm room situation, they were just gross. I mean, we were living amongst probably black mold. We were probably living amongst, God knows whatever. And then also in the dorm rooms or in the dorm building, regardless, if one room is stricken with the stomach flu, the entire building.
Oh, yeah.
The entire building is going to have it.
Awful.
So, I think that, unfortunately, was probably part of my decline in my health. And then junior year when I lived off campus, that was actually probably the best year I did health-wise. And that was the first year that I had my own individual room within a larger suite-style apartment. So I felt like I had the roommate experience still. And like I said, I loved having the roommates because it felt like I was a normal college kid. I think growing up, I'd always sort of been sheltered and protected by my parents for a lot of good reasons, and I think a lot of people will see it. And they feel that way because they grow up and they have to spend more time at home than other kids because they're doing treatments, and you gotta have more responsibility at a younger age than most people because you gotta know when you're taking your meds, what the meds are for, how to take them, et cetera, et cetera. So, I do think that when I finally went to college and I was living amongst my peers, I felt like I had finally been able to break out of the shell, so to speak.
Yeah. And I have to say, I think by virtue of having the single room and being able to close my door for the nights where I really needed to catch up on sleep or I just needed that like extra nap or whatever, I was able to close my door and have that personal space, but still have the experience of roommates. So that was the ideal situation for me initially. I mean, I did move off campus just to...
But not every college offers that.
Correct,
not every dorm room is set up like that. I do agree.
Totally.
That's definitely the ideal situation.
Right. In an ideal world, that would be cool.
The ideal world is, to live in a suite where you have your own little space where you can deal with your meds and you can keep your meds safe and stuff like that. Freshman year was sort of a free-for-all. Like, everything was just out in the open and, people had access. I mean, I definitely trust my roommate. And I did same thing my sophomore year when I also had a direct roommate as well in the larger suite. I definitely trust him not to go screw around with my stuff. But at the same time, it was a little bit of a free-for-all because there were just people everywhere and, your meds are there. And I remember one night there was... We had something happened in the dorm room where someone it was a staff personnel of the college walked in, and my syringes and medicine were all kind of on the little table that we ate lunch on or we ate meals on, and he kind of looked at me and was like, what is this? And I was just like, don't worry about it, just come do what you're supposed to do here and don't ask questions. So, things like that do happen. And, living with roommates, I think there were also you also have to demand things from your roommates to keep yourself safe. And one of
Totally.
the things that I absolutely demanded of them was that every year they get a flu shot. Like that was a
Yes.
absolutely non-negotiable thing.
Huge must. Yeah. We did the same in my suite. And we also just did like there were some baseline cleanliness even for the messy roommate that we all like agreed upon and made sure happened. Like I remember one of them was the fact that I like sponges in the kitchen sink, like that is just a breeding ground for germs
Oh,
in my
horrible.
opinion. It's
Oh,
awful.
just throw them out. We had a
Yeah.
thousand of those. You
Yeah.
just go through those things like
Yeah.
like candy bars. You just
Get rid of it.
one out of the wrapper right after the next. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
So that was like those were like little things that we made sure happened. And I think you have to be cautious. And actually after my hospitalization, my roommates were that much more attuned to what I was going through. Because again, like this was brand new for all of them.
How did you tell them?
Move-in day. I
Guess what?
schlepped in my vest and I was like, hey, so I have this thing. And they were all great about it. And,
The vest is
you
how I
know.
told my roommates too. I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's the easiest way to do it. You just strap the vest on and you're like,
Totally. And then they want to try
yeah,
it.
that's big. That's big. Everyone's like, oh, that looks awesome. It's really not that cool.
Thrilling.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think. Now, did you have contact with them beforehand? Did you ever, or did you just kind of show up and there they were?
A little bit. Like we talked about what we would be bringing for the kitchen but it didn't ever seem like the time to be like, oh, and by the way, I have a chronic lung disease. So
That you're gonna have to deal with for the next year.
yeah. So move-in day seemed the appropriate time. And it actually was a cool icebreaker. Because
Like, were your parents there and were their parents there, and or was this a solo thing?
pretty much solo. I think parents were in and out, but I remember, and she's one of my good friends to this day. I remember telling my friend Miranda, and that was actually what kind of prompted her to come out of her shell more. So yeah, again, a conversation starter and kind of like the basis of a good friendship if the person's willing to like be a warrior for you.
I think you have to remember, and what people often forget when they go off to college, everyone else is just as nervous as they are. You know,
Totally.
like everyone is all of a sudden thrust into this new world, and you're not the only one doing it.
Yeah.
You know, at BC, I was there with 2,000 other kids that were going through the exact same thing that I was, albeit I was the only one that had to tell other people that I had CF. Everyone else is going into a brand new situation. I mean, I guess if you went to boarding school, like you did the Holden Caulfield thing, but
Yeah.
not everyone does that. So if you're, if you're going to college and you're living on your own for your first time, it's a brand new thing for everyone. So everyone's gonna have their own baggage that they're gonna have to spill eventually, because there's very few secrets when you're living next door, when you're living 3 feet from someone.
And I think that is like a unique thing about moving in and having to share CF like right off the bat is you kind of do develop a quick closeness with the people around you because it is like a vulnerable thing to share. And it's kind of cool to be the one to be like, yeah, here we are, and like let's get to it. Let's talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I remember looking back, and Dave and I, our parents left, and Dave and I kind of looked at each other, and we're like, all right, what the hell do we do now? I mean, it was like 4 PM. We had to feed ourselves somehow, so we went down to the cafeteria or something like that. But and then you meet new people there also. Like the whole thing is just everyone is just so outgoing. Well, everyone's like, there's a very fine line between everyone being super outgoing and like trying to figure out what's appropriate level of outgoing, So
yeah. I'm still trying to figure that out.
Yeah. So, but now, tell us why did you've lived without roommates since? So why the change?
I find that for me personally, I just found that it is easier for me mentally to just like get up, do my treatments, and not have
Other people
the
around you.
the distraction. Yeah, and because I know myself so well that like if my friend was going out to grab coffee, I'd be like, sure, I'll like do my treatment later. Like um, I'm just that kind of personality, so it does just suit me much better to be on my own.
Yes, I mean that's a good point. I think you have to recognize what your limits and what your personality calls for. You
Yes.
know, I when people ask me, "Do you recommend that my son or daughter live with a roommate in college?" He or she may have CF, and I'm always like, "Well, does your son or daughter tell their friends about their CF to begin with? Because if you're gonna hide your CF, you can't live with roommates.
Right.
You know, you gotta be put in a situation where you can succeed with other people living there. You know,
Exactly.
and if you're just an introverted person, you know, perhaps living with a roommate is not the right idea.
Yeah.
But if you're someone who has been telling CF about, you've been telling your friends about CF since you're early in life. In my case, I was on Sports Illustrated at the age of 2. You could just Google search Gunnar Esiason and you would find out. So, I think there are different ways about, going about this. And do I think it's safe? Yeah, I think it's totally safe as long as you can live with responsible roommates. I mean, to this day, my dad gives my college roommates crap about how I always got sick in college and things like that. And he always sort of, in a joking way, puts the blame on them where, I don't really put any of the blame on them. It's all on myself, really. But, at the end of the day, in a lot of ways, they were there for me in hard, critical situations. Because with CF, the thing is, if you're living by yourself, you don't have the first responder.
Right.
That's a risk that you take by living on your own.
Yeah. One of my roommates, actually, the day that I really knew that I needed a tune-up in my first semester, I knew I was going to the doctor, but I asked her to come with me because I could just tell that I wasn't feeling right. And thank goodness I did because we went and I was asked to stay. And she went back to school for me and like packed a bag before my parents could get up here. So yeah, for sure, roommates come in handy in those situations, especially when they're good people. Hopefully you.
As if there's bad people out there too.
I mean.
I mean, I see what you're saying. I definitely look back on a few situations. There was one time when I was just so totally sick that like, they have to be there to help you like get what you need.
Yeah, I don't mean good people versus bad people. I mean like people that are really willing to
they're also responsible
like,
and they can be held accountable and you can lean on them when you need to. I think that's what I mean by a first responder. I don't mean someone that's gonna, bring you back
CPR.
to life or something like that. Yeah, I mean more of like someone that can go get you soup if you're not feeling well, or someone that can, like if you got the stomach flu, someone that can sort of help you until you can, come around and keep the fluids down or whatever. I think, with CF, there's things that happen beyond just the normal cold and the normal whatever that people deal with, that it's nice to have someone around that if, you have to go to the pharmacy and pick something up, but you're too sick to even get out of bed.
right.
Your buddy can go to the pharmacy for you.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this with romantic relationships, but I think it's the same with friends.
If you're living with them, yeah.
You need to, and there needs to be a level of compassion and understanding that I think is unique, or I know is unique for living with someone with a chronic illness. And I think, certain people are willing and ready to take that on. And
absolutely, I definitely have a lot of friends that I would lean on and consider as roommates, but then I also have a ton of friends that I really enjoy spending time with. That it would be kind of it would be a bumpy road to live with that person. And I mean them no disrespect. It's just because they have a lot going on in their own lives and, it just wouldn't work out. So it's all about finding the right person. But that freshman year of college when you may not necessarily have a choice, that, there's a few different risks involved, I think, is what I'm trying to say.
yes, exactly. Yeah. I mean, you and I are big advocates for being open about your CF from the get-go, which I think is probably a good thing to come to terms with in college, just because I think it'll help in the long run. But
totally.
Which is a pro for roommates too. So
Yeah, I mean that'll help you do it, and it eventually gives you allies too, right? It gives you allies in situations where, you do have a bunch of friends over to your room, or a bunch of people that you may not know over to your room, and you know how those things go in college or in a party, and you're inviting someone like, oh, can my friend of a friend of a friend come?
Yeah.
It's hard to say no to those things.
Right.
So when you do have roommates, you have allies in situations where you may need them. I look at the situations where I've had my friends ask other people or strangers to put out cigarettes or to be comfortable with leaving somewhere that may have been fun because someone was smoking or
Right.
God knows what was going on. Or we walked into somewhere and there was vomit all over the floor. I mean, college is a vile, disgusting place.
It is.
Maybe not the most safe place for people with cystic fibrosis, but I do ultimately think that it's a very important rite of passage for people with CF, because a lot of times those moments are when you learn how to find yourself and get through difficult challenges without mom and dad being there by your side.
Right. Yeah. You learn how to take care of yourself, really. I mean, everyone's learning it too, but you're learning on a whole new level.
Exactly. And if you live there with a roommate, you're also, for the first time, teaching somebody else how to care for you as well. Because they become, as much as they are your friend and part of your support system, they're also taking on a role as a caregiver in some situations.
Right. Yeah.
It may not be. They may not be offering physical care, but they're sure as hell offering emotional care.
Oh, for sure. And that actually, I think, is where my friends came in after my hospitalization in a huge way. Like, they were all of a sudden more sensitive to my time for treatments, and they were like on me now. Like, they were like, let's go sit in your room together and I'll study while you and then if I tried to start talking to them, they'd be like, okay, shut it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had the experience as well where, by the time I was a senior and I was living I had my own room with a larger suite, it was not uncommon for someone else to walk in the room while I was doing treatments just so they could sit with me or do whatever. And, those are also like great social moments. Those are like you're separated from everyone else. You're talking with somebody, right? Those are good times to just talk about whatever,
Right.
So in the end, I think I'm certainly an advocate for living with a roommate, especially if it's like a true college scenario. And it's one of those things that I think I miss most about college is living with a roommate. And it's certainly something, if I didn't live with my parents, I would definitely probably do now.
Yeah. I would live with a roommate again.
Yeah.
I would live with a roommate again. I loved living with roommates in college. It taught me a lot.
Even though you only did it for 1 year.
Yeah. But that had more to do with the rules, like in the building. I was just like, I was over it, But I would definitely recommend it for the first college experience, especially for the first year. Like, meeting people is just so much easier.
Yeah.
And being open with your CF is easier when you have roommates. And I think that that's a valuable lesson to learn too. Like, you learn so much by virtue of having roommates in college.
Oh, absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. You learn a lot about yourself too.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Totally. I would do it.
Okay. So that's that. And then now on to Making It Matter. I came across a really cool story today. JP Thornton is a 12-year-old with CF, and he's developed quite a relationship with the University of North Florida basketball team, which, by the way, is the Ospreys. That is an awesome mascot.
Yes.
And so I guess JP is a huge UNF fan, and he was in pretty tough time in the hospital this past April, and the UNF basketball team since then has developed quite a relationship and has taken him under their wing. So that's a pretty cool thing for any 12-year-old, let alone to have someone, a CF. He's an inspirational leader for the team, and it's a really fantastic story. I'll put the link. Definitely watch the video. I can say that I probably never even heard of the UNF Ospreys, but now I have, and I'm a huge fan all of a sudden. So definitely check them out. I'll put the link here and definitely take a look.
It's a great story. I loved this story.
So
go UNF Ospreys.
Yes, you tell them, Julia. So that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for tuning in for the 30th episode. I can't believe we're up to 30. The 30th episode of Making It Matter. Remember, you can follow along with our weekly podcast via my YouTube channel on GunnarEsiason.com or JuliaRay.com. Also, make sure you check out the new podcast or the new video series that the Boomer Esiason Foundation is releasing, Cystic Fibrosis Step by Step with Gunnar Esiason. The first episode actually did feature Julia, so definitely take a look for that on YouTube. Now you can also, back to this podcast, you can also subscribe to us on iTunes, on Instagram. And if you want to see us podcast about something specific, you can always send us an email. Julia's email is
JuliaRay@JuliaRay.com.
or email me at gunnarsblog@esiason.org, or send either of us a message on Facebook. That's how we get to this topic, right? I mean, we got a question, and now we're answering it.
Yeah. You can ask questions on Instagram, too. We've gotten questions there, too. You can, any social media
Anything
way
where you can interact.
find us. Yeah,
Make Mark Zuckerberg proud.
Yes.
See?
Next thing is going to be a Making It Matter Snapchat. No, never. Never, people. That's not happening.
You don't want to see people a day in the life of Julia? No? Not happening?
It's not thrilling, I promise.
I don't know. You had an audition today. It sounds pretty cool.
I did, yeah. All right, well, maybe we'll do it.
Maybe we can do it. You can do it with the Instagram Snap Story thing.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I'll do that.
Day in the life. There you go. Boom. All right, so this is Gunnar Esiason and Julia Ray signing off.
Bye.